Minister amid controversy over all of his houses.
Robert Troy has said he was an open book and was happy to clarify his property interests. But earlier this week, he refused to be drawn on the subject when our own Virgin Media News correspondent Richard Chambers attempted to get a response. Here's what happened.
Do you think it's tenable for you to continue in your position, given the amount of money? Do you feel it was a conflict of interest?
I'm after speaking. I've given an interview and I've said all that I'm going to say in the matter.
But as a Minister for Company Regulation, do you think it makes sense at all for you to be allowed to continue in that role, given the amount of things which you said you've gotten badly wrong here? Anything you want to say at all, Minister?
I've spoken. I've given a full account of what's happened. I'm unwilling to speak in the Dáil in September again.
Do you think you'll have the opportunity? Do you think you should resign, Minister?
Richard loved that, didn't he? He loved getting to do that. And
too,
Robert going, can you get the door open? Can you just unlock the car, please? Joining us now
job.
With their take on Robert Troy's resignation, our Bauer Media's political correspondent Sean Defoe and People Before Profit TD Paul Murphy. Thank you both so much for being here this morning. We're finding levity in this, but it is very serious as to what's going on. Now, last night, of course, he resigned his junior ministerial position. But, Sean, what has brought us to this situation with Robert Troy? It's been rumbling on now for the last...
Yeah, for 2 weeks it's been rumbling on. It's been sort of the drip feed of information that's come out over the last 2 weeks. So initially it was in relation to a property he bought for about €80,000 and flipped 3 months later for €160,000 and hadn't declared on his returns of members' interest as a member of the Dáil. Now, he said he got it wrong on that he thought he only had to declare property and interest in at the very end of the year, when very clearly on the form it says anything you have during the year. So that was sort of the first story that came out. And then there was more, and then there was more. There was not registering a tenancy with the Residential Tenancies Board. There was having a number of tenancies under the Rental Accommodation Scheme and the HAPS scheme, both of which he was speaking on in the Dáil while benefiting from financially. And sort of these drips kept on coming. Yesterday, then, questions about fire safety at one of the properties he's owned. And indeed, last night, a story from the Irish Times about complaints about one of the properties that he co-owns and the condition of it from some of the neighbours who were in the area as well. So that was, I think, ultimately the final straw when it kept on coming, and that drip kept on coming eventually. Robert Troy made the decision yesterday, phoned the Taoiseach yesterday evening and told him that he was going to resign. Do you think he was put under pressure to leave, or do you think it was just a jump before he's pushed?
I'm not sure if it was quite a jump before he was pushed. The Taoiseach's spokesperson very clear to say last night that the Taoiseach didn't ask for his resignation, and up until yesterday both the Taoiseach and the Taoiseach were supporting him and saying yes, he's given a full account of himself and could keep on in this position. But there was pressure building within Fianna Fáil, because obviously they were thinking, look, this looks really bad for us as a party. This is everything we don't want to talk about in Fianna Fáil, going back to the Celtic Tiger days of Fianna Fáil TDs being involved in dodgy property deals. So
he didn't break the law. Do you know, yes, he didn't fill in a few forms, and optically, as you say, it doesn't look good. But is it really enough to lose your job over?
He's still a TD.
Well, he said,
I know, but he had the property for 3 months. He didn't have it at the end, and I know it probably had an underlined in bold writing, "You must do this." But we all fill in form. Well, I certainly a disaster.
Yeah, people are very, very looking into Tommy's business straight away that you've said that. But no, I think where it comes down to is the one that I suppose got for me, aside from all of that, like you said, didn't break the law in any sort of a way and didn't do anything wrong in that sense. The ones that got me were the HAP tenancies and the RAS tenancies, because he was, as a minister, was in the Dáil saying there needs to be an increase in the amount of these payments. There needs to be changes to how HAP is done and how quickly you can get it approved. And he also had put in parliamentary questions, as the Irish Times reported yesterday, in relation to, can you evict someone during the pandemic while he was a landlord? So that they're all instances in which he was using his position.
Let's look at this. That's, Paul, it's not a good look asking that question. Can you evict someone during the pandemic? Now,
and he did break the law. Just to be clear, he broke the law repeatedly, right? So the Ethics in Public Office Act, that's what says you have to declare your property, you have to declare your company directorships, you have to declare your contracts with public bodies. On at least 9 different occasions he broke. And then he broke the Residential Tenancies Act, which says that if you're a landlord, you have to register your property. So, these laws are meant to apply to everybody.
To everyone.
All right, OK, fair enough.
And when you're someone who's in public office in a country like ours, where, we're founded on the Land League, when landlords were making rules in this country and doing whatever the hell they wanted, it is certainly not a good look, and we remember things like that. In relation to that, we all know that people he says it's a lack of due diligence, Paul, and the fact that he mentioned these things inside in the Parliament Do you think you should have to declare, as you say this, I am a landlord myself, I am putting this forward? Do you think you should have to do that?
Well, you do have to.
But not everyone does. No, we all know that not everyone does that when they're putting something forward.
But they're absolutely meant to. That's precisely why, this guy was lobbying, like Sean said, was saying we need to make it, we need to see how can we help landlords evict tenants in the context of COVID. We need more money to be going to HAP and RAS landlords. Okay, he has a right to do it. The state as a whole is given close to €1 billion a year in these schemes to private landlords. But he has to declare that he is personally benefiting from these government policies, which are their response to the housing crisis, as opposed to actually building public housing. And I think that's at the essence of the political issue here, is that they're not building public housing. Instead, they're subsidising private landlords like Robert Troy. And at the very, very kind of minimal position is that you have to declare that, so at least people know when you're talking about it, oh, you have a personal interest in this.
I have sat here before and I've certainly said that we need to look at private landlords in a different way. They need to be looked at like corporate landlords, because we do have people who bought a house 20 years ago, it's their pension, and it's one house. Something like this changes that, doesn't it? Like something like this makes
it'd be hard
the
for the
public
government
perception.
if there's 80 people in government that are landlords, it's hard for them to push anything across that's in benefit for small landlords if this is going to be what happens.
Because we're losing private landlords to corporate landlords, and that's something that is having a detrimental effect in this country, Paul. You see that, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, the problem is we have a government, in my opinion, made up of landlords and that rules for landlords. The amount of money going to landlords in this state as a whole, right, and more of it's going to corporate than small, but has tripled over the past 5 years from about 5 billion to about 15 billion. 1 billion of that is public money. Like, fundamentally, landlords don't provide any real service in this economy, don't create any wealth. The houses already exist. People want to live in them. The point, people should have a right to a home. Everybody should have a right to a home. We should have rent controls, and we should have public housing. And we should get rid of the corporate landlords. We should nationalise them, turn them into public housing, and we should say to small landlords, look, if you want to get out, no problem. The state will buy the house off you for market rate. You can get out, and then we'll have public tenancies.
And that's getting away from this maybe situation as well. That is a thing that we're constantly talking about here. But in terms of the damage that this is maybe done, is it a case that he's got out in time to hopefully not damage Fianna Fáil and the government for when they do come back in?
I think we're beyond that now, in fairness.
Really?
I think the damage is, especially when it is something like housing, which is so fundamental for so many people. There are people all across the country struggling. And one of the bits that struck me from Robert Troy's statement last night was, he very much defended being a landlord. He said, I won't apologise for being a landlord at all. I bought my first house at age 20.
I know.
And, it was fair enough. It was a different time. It was 2002. There was more credit available. It was sort of different. But, there is no one who can relate to that now. Anyone under the age of 35 that can relate to that, I would be absolutely shocked. Yeah. He says he worked for it. He went straight out of school into work, and that's how he had the money. And I don't know what kind of loan he got and all that sort of stuff. But people are not able to get a house at age 30, age 35 now, under the decisions that have been made by the Fine Gael government and the Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael government that have come in since. So I think it further alienates ministers in particular from regular people. As you said, 80 members of the Dáil, half the members of the Dáil are landlords. They don't really understand what's going on. They're on the top 5-10% of earners in the country already before you get into a minister's salary. Yeah. So I think that damage is already done there.
But the fact that he has resigned from his junior ministership, is that enough? Are people going to be like, you shouldn't be a TD anymore? Because obviously they've got, the government have a very slim majority, and we're going into budget. They need all the TDs that they can get.
Well, that's one of the reasons that they didn't want to sack him in the first place.
Yeah,
now, they were fairly confident Robert Troy would continue to vote with Fianna Fáil. He said at the end of the statement he hopes to be in a position to serve in a ministry again in the future, which has become this new sort of thing whenever ministers resign now. They're like, I'm resigning for now, but maybe in a few years I'll have a better name and I'll be able to get back in on it. So, no, I don't think he's going to resign as a TD. I think he'll absolutely stay on. Maybe Paul wanted to resign as a TD. I don't know. But
I think he shouldn't vote, and nor should any other private landlord, shouldn't be voting on things in the Dáil that directly affect his own interests. So, we had a rent reductions bill on the last day of voting in the Dáil before the summer break.
You're taking half the TDs out
Sure.
That's literally it.
If you're looking at vested interests of every politician, what they shouldn't vote for, it would become a minefield. But listen, we'd love to know from people at home as well, what do you think with this? Is the damage already done with this government, particularly